A woman breaks free from a childhood of financial exploitation, only to have her life savings taken by her own family members. Say hello to Mandy, whose $78,000 dream was crushed at a reunion. This is Stolen Dreams. Part 1. A story of betrayal that'll leave you speechless. Drop where you're watching from in the comments. Subscribe if you've battled for your own protection. Stay tuned for the jaw-dropping twist. My name is Mandy, and at 32 years old, I believed I had finally broken free from the financial exploitation that characterized my childhood. After 14 years of establishing autonomy, I dropped my guard at our family reunion. The following morning, I found $78,000 taken from my account, when questioned. My father just snorted, "We needed it more than you." That moment dissolved any fantasy of family I still held on to. Before I go on with this tale, know where you are viewing from in the comments below. Hit that red subscribe button if you've ever had to fend for yourself from those who were supposed to watch your back. Having parent with unstable finances dictated every detail of my childhood. My dad, Robert, never met a gamble he could resist: slot machines, card games, sportsbook bets, illegal dog fights in abandoned warehouses, you name it. He would be gone for days, then come back flushed with cash and with over-the-top gifts. Or more often, beaten and desperate in search of anything of worth to pawn. My mother, Diana, made it possible for him to do so at every turn. She was a bank teller, ironically enough, but her paycheck never got far. "Your father just needs one big win," she'd promise me, while rummaging around my room for loose change. "His luck is going to turn around." My earliest recollection of their financial exploitation was when I was 6 years old. I had worked hard to save birthday cash from my grandmother in a pink ceramic piggy bank in the form of a ballerina dancer. For months, I deposited quarters from lemonade stands and dollars from assisting neighbors with tiny tasks. Its weight brought me so much pride. One evening, I overheard a crash coming from my bedroom. I discovered my father standing above the broken pieces of my piggy bank coins in his fist. "Just taking this princess," he said without glancing at me. Double money by morning promise, money never came back. Neither did any of the later piggy banks. My allowance when I actually did get it became a family joke. "Borrowing from the Mandy Bank," my father would say as he took the $5 intended to last me the week. By 16, I had learned to stash money in spots where they would never think to look. By 17, I had a secret bank account in my name under my Aunt Lisa. By 18, I was out the door with $342 to my name and a vow to myself that I would never be dependent on anyone anymore. Those initial years of independence were merciless. I worked as a waitress from 5 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then as a retail clerk until 10 o'clock at night, sleeping hardly 4 hours before resuming again. Community college coursework bridged the gaps between shifts. I shared a studio apartment with 4 other women, each of us staking out a corner sharing a bathroom with the whole floor. Through sheer will, I had a 3.8 GPA working 70-hour weeks. An internship in marketing my junior year became my deliverance. My boss, Vivian, saw something in me I hardly noticed in myself. She counseled me, recommended me for a paid job, and penned a glowing recommendation that got me an entry-level marketing position following graduation. For the ensuing decade, I ascended stepwise. Junior copywriter to content strategist, to campaign manager to department lead. Each promotion was accompanied by fiscal discipline. While peers purchased new vehicles and took far-flung vacations, I resided in the same one-bedroom apartment, drove the same dependable sedan, and invested every spare dollar into savings and investments. Last year, at 31, all that led up to my advancement to senior marketing director at one of Seattle's biggest companies, my pay was doubled for the first time. I breathed comfortably regarding money. The $78,000 in my savings account was not only cash, it was my liberty. The down payment on a house I'd selected the cornerstone of the stable life I'd established inch by agonizing inch. Over the course of all these years, my family life with my parents was strained but polite. They contacted when they required money, which I at first handed over with the innocent hope of finally getting their acceptance. Just until payday, they would vow to only pay for the electricity bill. The loans were never returned, and the requests increased in size every time. At which point, I lost $5,000 to them 3 years ago on emergency medical expenses that turned out to pay for a jaunt to Atlantic City. I finally established firm boundaries. No more money, no more bailouts, no more enabling. Their reaction was predictable. I became the cold daughter, the selfish one who dumped her family, the ungrateful child who lost sight of where she came from. Monthly calls turned into quarterly text messages, then virtual silence, when the invitation to the family reunion arrived last month. I almost threw it. Years of limited contact had provided me with space to heal. My doctor-therapist Winter recommended that going with firm boundaries could bring closure. You can go in without exposing yourself, she counseled. Watch, but don't join in. So against my better judgment, I accepted. One weekend. One opportunity to determine if any genuine family bond was still a possibility. Perhaps time and space had altered our dynamic. Perhaps they'd matured along with me. Perhaps. How much I longed to hope we could be a typical family. How totally that hope would deceive me. I came to my parents' house on a Friday night in June. I immediately noticed repairs that appeared impossible on their stated income. The ramshackle bungalow of my youth now had new siding, a porch with wicker furniture that wrapped around the house, and landscaping that cried professional upkeep. When I remarked on the improvements, my mother brushed away dismissively. Your father has been doing handyman chores for neighbors. You know how handy he is with fixes. I did know. Clever enough to jury-rig things that inevitably failed within weeks. Nothing my father built ever lasted. These renovations testified to skilled contractors and significant investment. The interior told the same tale. New hardwood floors substituted for the stained carpet. I recalled kitchen appliances shone with the showroom luster of recent acquisition. A 70-inch TV commandeered the living room wall. For individuals who habitually phoned me begging for assistance with bills, they lived surprisingly well. Mandy, my Aunt Lisa, hugged me at the door, whispering, "Hold on to your hat, honey. Everybody's in rare form tonight." Aunt Lisa had been my lifeline through the worst years. The one grown-up who wasn't fooled by my parents' manipulation. Her presence comforted me. The house soon filled with distant relatives, cousins I hardly knew, uncles debating politics, children dashing through rooms. In the kitchen, my mother sat at center court, holding court and accepting compliments on her fancy spread of catered food. She said she had prepared herself. There she is. My dad saw me, but from the other side of the room, the great career woman. "Come give your old man a hug." He acted so proud, bracing to all about my daughter, marketing executive or whatever. His arm slung considerably over my shoulders as he showed me off. Always knew she was intelligent. That she gets from my side, you know. My mom was just as solicitous, bringing me drinks I did not order, introducing me over and over again as our successful daughter, asking me in-depth questions regarding my work, my apartment, my friends. She had never been this interested in my life before. "They are laying it on thick," my little brother, Jacob, grumbled when we had a few moments alone. Jacob had followed my lead, moving out at 18 and keeping careful distance. At 28, he was working as an auto mechanic in Portland, going to visit our parents only on special holidays. "Mom inquired if you were still with that investment broker," he cautioned. "Looks especially interested in your finances." "Patrick and I broke up 6 months ago," I said, perplexed. "I informed her when it occurred." Jacob arched an eyebrow. She went on to say, "You must be doing especially well to be able to afford that luxury condo downtown." I reside in a typical apartment complex in Capitol Hill, nothing luxury about it. A familiar discomfort rose up my spine. They were casting for information, feeling out the waters. Even with these portents of warning, part of me longed to think that this weekend might repair old wounds. When we sat down to dinner and my father invited me to sit beside him at his right hand, I felt a childhood pleasure I could not hide. When he leaned over to hear my description of our current marketing push, I caught a glimpse of the father I had always hoped for. After dinner, cousins I hadn't seen in years produced photo albums. We guffawed over humiliating childhood photos and recalled lake summers for a couple of hours. It tasted like true connection. "Do you remember when Mandy saved for 6 months to purchase that bike?" my mother related, nodding at a picture of 12-year-old me with my chest out beside a blue Schwinn. What she did not say was what happened to that bicycle 2 weeks after that, apparently stolen from our garage. I found the receipt later on where my dad had pawned it to a pawn shop. Independent and financially smart, my father added. Not like her old father. But hey, that reminds me. How is that investment portfolio of yours going, Patrick? Had you in some good stocks, right? The question sounded light, but his eyes had uncharacteristic intensity, still basking in warm attention. I talked more freely than I should have. Actually, I changed advisors after Patrick and I broke up. My new investments have done fantastically this year. My advisor moved some holdings into tech startups that almost tripled. My father whistled. Smart girl. Bet you have got a nice nest egg building. She does, my Aunt Lisa cut in firmly, and she works incredibly hard for every cent of it. The subject changed, but all the way through the evening, financial matters continued to crop up. How much did marketing directors earn nowadays? Was I about to make any significant purchases soon? Had I thought of assisting Jacob with his student loans? By midnight, drained from constant watchfulness, I retreated to the guest room. I set my purse containing my wallet and cell phone in the bedside drawer, a hang-up of years of guarding my valuables. Before sleep overcame me, I did something I hadn't done in my parents' house for decades. A fragile hope that maybe we could construct something like a healthy family relationship. That hope would not make it through the morning. I woke up at 7:30 the following morning to my phone ringing with transaction notifications. Half asleep. I went to open my banking app thinking I'd see some usual coffee shop or streaming service renewal. Instead, I stopped at the balance on screen, $837.22 yesterday. That account had held $78.837.22. My immediate thought was a technical glitch. I shut down the app, cleared the cache, and opened it again. The balance was still the same. Pounding heart. I reviewed my transaction history. A string of transfers had emptied the account, all executed between 2 and 4 a.m., all with authorization from a phantom device. Still wearing pajamas, I phoned the bank's fraud department, pacing the tiny guest room while on hold, when a representative finally picked up the conversation, ruined any possibility of an easy solution. Yes, Miss Carter, we do display a couple of big transfers out of your savings account last night. I did not make those transfers, I demanded. It has to be some kind of fraud. Our records show the transfers were made with your valid password and authentication app on your registered device. The accessing IP address indicates. She stopped. The location. Looks to be your current location based on our records. My blood turned cold. Could you tell me precisely where the transfers were sent? Several different accounts. The biggest was to one Robert Carter. Do you recognize that name? My father. My own dad had somehow gotten into my accounts and spent my savings while I slept on his floor. I hung up the phone and rummaged through my purse desperately. My wallet seemed untouched. But checking my secondary telephone compartment where I had stashed a small notebook with account information, I saw slight variations in the way things were placed. Someone had rummaged through my bag. Memories of the night before flashed before me. My mother insisting to take my jacket to hang it correctly. My purse temporarily left behind in the living room when Lisa had called me to look at something in the garden. The very deep sleep I had slept following the solitary glass of wine my mother had insisted I have. They had conspired. The whole reunion, the unseasonable warmth, the incisive inquiries regarding my money, all culminating into this betrayal. Physical symptoms struck. Then my hands shook so terribly I dropped my phone. Nausea sent me to the bathroom where I retched painfully. Sweat pounded on my forehead even though it was cool morning weather. $78,000, my down payment on my house, my emergency fund, my safety lost. A text from my cousin Ellie materialized. Thanks for the wonderful gift. How did you know I needed this specific laptop for school? Uncle Rob replied, you insisted on helping with my education. Then another from Uncle Thomas, generous of you to donate to the family vacation rental. Rob says you are paying half, and lastly from my brother Mandy, call me ASAP. Something is wrong. Mom and Dad are suddenly flush with cash buying everyone gifts. I called Jacob right away fighting to keep my voice even as I told him what had happened. I knew it. He spoke voice strained with anger. They have been preparing for this for months. Dad told me the week before they were looking forward to a windfall. I thought perhaps he had actually landed a good job. Mandy, I am so sorry. Did you know they would do that? I asked, desperate to be sure. No, God. No, I would have warned you. But I knew something was wrong with this entire reunion. They have never paid attention to family gatherings before. As we talked, I could hear movement downstairs. Laughter, the clinking of dishes. My parents and other family members eating breakfast, as though they had not just stolen from their own daughter $78,000. Jacob, all that I worked for my house down payment. All those years. Why did they do this? Because they don't perceive it as yours. He spoke in a soft voice. In their heads, family money is shared, and they should have it more because they are the parents. They will never get what they have done is wrong. I hung up and sat at the side of the bed trying to get my head around things. This was not a family argument. This was robbery. Simple as that. They had broken into my accounts and put my money in their own. The fact that they were my parents did not change the illegality of what they had done, but family issues made everything complicated. Would the police listen to this? Would the bank reverse the transfers when the access had been from my own devices with my passwords? What would this do to the extended family if I laid charges against my own parents? $78,000. I could not just write it off. That money had stood for years of sacrifice of ramen dinners and rejected social invitations of 60-hour work weeks and deferred dreams. I heard my father's booming laughter from downstairs, followed by my mother's thrilled response. They were partying while I remained broken in the guest room. They were partying over their stealing as if it were a windfall they had rightfully received. In that instant, something hardened within me. The last vestige of reconciliation, hope, died. The last commitment of family duty evaporated. They were not family. They were thieves who coincidentally had my DNA, and I would treat them so. My initial reaction was to charge downstairs and call the police on the spot. But years of dealing with my parents had taught me that impulsive reactions gave them power. They thrived in chaos and emotional outbursts. If I wanted justice, I needed to be strategic. I texted my friend Sarah, who worked as a financial crimes attorney. Despite the early hour on a Saturday, she responded immediately. Do not confront them alone. Document everything, call the bank again, and formally report the fraud. I will meet you at my office at noon. Next, I phoned Aunt Lisa, who had gone home to her hotel late the night before. If something like this was going to happen, she said, disappointment weighing heavily in her voice. Your mother has been dropping hints for weeks about a new car and fixing up the house. I will be there in 20 minutes. Don't go downstairs by yourself. Waiting for Lisa. I carefully collected evidence. I captured screenshots of the unauthorized withdrawals. I took a photo of where my bag was searched. I took a video tour of the house showing the new costly items contradicting my parents' declared financial difficulties. I also discovered something unsettling on my phone. A message indicated that my banking verification app had been opened at 2:15 in the morning when I was sleeping. They used my fingerprint while I was sleeping to verify the transactions. The transgression made me sick to my stomach when Lisa showed up. I slipped silently through the back door to greet her in her car. She embraced me tightly as I finally cried. "I know a good attorney," she said when my tears abated. "Your cousin Michael does financial crimes. This is stealing, Mandy. Pure and simple. The fact that they're your parents makes it worse, not better." For the next 3 hours, we established a case. Sarah reported to the fraud department at the bank with her credentials. Formal investigation set up. Michael had paperwork for a police report prepared. Lisa gave written testimony regarding spending habits and statements my parents made about spending my money. "This is what we need to know," Michael explained in a soft tone. "It will get ugly. Your parents will say you gave them permission. They will call it a gift or a loan. They will make relatives turn on you. Are you ready for that? They already took my money." I responded, "What else can they take from me? Your relationships with your extended family? Your sense of peace? Your energy for months or even years' worth of legal battles?" Sarah counted on her fingers. "This is not going to be easy or quick." Neither was working for that money. I stated resolutely, "I want it back, all of it." We came up with a multi-pronged plan. First, the bank would freeze any remaining funds in the transferred accounts. Second, we would file a police report for identity theft and fraud. Third, we would confront my parents with legal representation present, giving them one opportunity to return the money before escalating to criminal charges. Before leaving Sarah's office, I called Dr. Winters, my therapist, and scheduled an emergency session that afternoon. "You need emotional support as much as legal support." She reminded me during our call, "This is a deep hurt by the ones that should have defended you most." I spent an hour with Dr. Winters sorting through the tangled emotions coursing through me. Anger at the betrayal, sadness at the family relationship I had stupidly hoped might still be intact. Shame for having dropped my guard after all those years of evidence my parents had not changed. "You didn't do anything wrong to expect a healthy relationship with your parents," Dr. Winters reassured me. "That is a natural and human expectation. They are the ones who betrayed trust, not you." By evening, our legal plan was underway. Sarah had drawn up a formal demand letter. The bank had raised flags on the accounts to which my money had been wired. Michael had submitted initial paperwork for a police report subject to my ultimate determination of whether to charge them. I slept at Lisa's hotel, too afraid to go back to my parents' home, all night long. I got more and more alarmed messages from Jacob, who had left the reunion early to drive home to Portland. "They are spending all your money on gifts for everyone," he told me. "It is gross." In the morning, Lisa.Sarah.Michael and I got together for breakfast to go over our plan one last time. Michael had hired a sheriff's deputy to ride with us, standing outside unless called upon. Sarah had all the legal documents in a portfolio. Lisa had spoken to some of the major family members who had witnessed my parents' out-of-control spending, getting them on board in case testimony was required. As for me, I prepared a small suitcase with evidence we had collected, including reports of past financial manipulations by my parents. I had documented evidence of the origin of the stolen money. My bank statements for all those years of disciplined saving that had grown that account. I brought printouts of text messages in which my parents had borrowed money before, with no intention of paying it back. Most importantly, I brought my determination. For 32 years, I had switched between wanting their approval and guarding myself against their exploitation. Today would break that cycle for good. Ready? Sarah asked as we drove up to my parents' residence. I breathed in deeply. I have been ready for this all my life. We arrived at my parents' residence at precisely 10 in the morning. The sheriff's deputy parked unobtrusively down the street, waiting to approach when instructed. Michael rode with him while Sarah, Lisa, and I approached the front door. My hand quivered a little as I pressed the doorbell of the house that was my childhood home. Regardless of how ready I believed I was facing those who had brought me up and then betrayed me, sent adrenaline racing through my veins. My father opened surprise, flickering on his face before becoming a familiar smile. Mandy, we wondered where you went yesterday. And Lisa, it's good to see you again. Who is your friend? This is Sarah, I replied bluntly. My lawyer. His smile wavered for a moment before setting into its previous tighter configuration. Lawyer, what is this regarding Diana? Come and see who is here. My mother emerged from behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her eyes flicking nervously between the two of us, hovering over Sarah's professional dress and the portfolio under her arm. May we come in? Lisa inquired, her tone, making it not so much a question as a statement. My father moved aside, leading us into the living room where only 2 days before we had shared pictures and laughter as a family. Now tension hummed in the air. Robert, Diana. I started properly. You know well why I am here. You broke into my financial records and withdrew $78,000 to yourselves and others. My father made no move to deny it. Instead, he laughed, planting heavily in his new leather recliner. It is just money. Mandy, you've got plenty where that came from with your high-paying job. That was down payment on my house, I said, struggling to maintain an even tone. Money I worked for 14 years. We needed it more, he said, waving his hand aside. The family needed it. You would know if you weren't so selfish. My mother came forward, eyes wide with rehearsed innocence. Honey, we were going to talk to you. We only knew you would refuse if we asked us first. You say no to everything nowadays. Because you never pay back what you lend, I shot back. That is stealing, not lending. We gave you life. My father clamped on his pretense of jollity wilting. Everything you possess was given to you by us. That makes it family money. Sarah advanced, slipping open her portfolio. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I act for Mandy on this case. What you have done is not the way that the law perceives parent-child relationships or financial responsibilities. You have committed identity theft, bank fraud, and grand larceny. My mom's eyes welled with tears. How could you bring a lawyer against your own parents after all that we've done for you? What have you done for me anyway? I asked softly. Stolen my childhood savings, taken the bicycle that I purchased with my own money, borrowed thousands. You never paid back? Or do you mean opening my accounts while I slept in your house as a guest? You ungrateful little shit. My father started getting up from his chair. I have everything documented. I cut in. Every unauthorized transaction. Every account where my money was transferred. Every transaction you've made since it was stolen. The bank has already frozen the remaining amount. My father's face turned red. You can't prove anything. You were in our house. Perhaps you shared our passwords. Perhaps you made those transfers yourself, and now you're regretting. Actually? Sarah interrupted. The transfers were made between 2 and 4 in the morning when Mandy was sleeping. The verification was done via her fingerprint while she was unconscious. Maybe after having something given to her to induce deep sleep. That puts this into a more serious level of crime. My mother's tears evaporated immediately. You've always been dramatic, Mandy, always making things up. No one will believe you against us. The proof is in the pudding, Lisa stated, and I will corroborate your words regarding accessing Mandy's accounts. Diana. So will others who overheard you talking about it. You have a choice, I remarked, reaching into my bag where we had set down the legal papers. Pay me back my money in full within tomorrow, or I report you to the authorities for theft and fraud." My father guffawed a bitter laugh that was totally devoid of humor. "Go ahead. Look how that will work with the family when you take your own parents to court." Who are they going to believe? The daughter who left her family or the parents who gave up everything for her? Then you will not care what happens next, I said, hands still on my bag. My parents looked at each other, then they both laughed scornfully. At that exact moment, there was a deafening boom as the sheriff's deputy pounded hard on the front door. My father's laughter stopped suddenly. The door burst open as Michael came in with the deputy legal documents in hand, Robert and Diana Carter. The deputy inquired. It was obviously a formality. "I have before me an emergency freeze order on your assets in relation to an investigation of fraud." My father sprang up from his chair. "This is absurd. You can't just storm into my house." "Actually, sir, I can. I possess a warrant for the financial crimes investigation." The deputy handed him the paper. "These accounts have been identified as suspicious activity that is typical for identity theft and unauthorized withdrawals." My mother started crying again, this time with real fear in her eyes. "Mandy, how could you do this to us? We are your parents. Parents don't steal from children," I answered firmly. "They guard them." The argument escalated rapidly. My dad's outrage gave way to fury and then panic as he became aware of how serious things were. My mom vacillated between begging and blaming, saying I had always been selfish, always been aloof, always made the wrong assumptions about them, while the deputy outlined the course of legal action that would be taken. The front door burst open again. My Aunt Ruth and Uncle Thomas came in, having come for the weekend barbecue my parents had invited to mark their good fortune. "Whatever is this?" Ruth asked, looking at the scene with bewilderment. "Your brother embezzled $78,000 from Mandy's accounts," Lisa told matter-of-factly. "Now he is paying the price." The expression of shock on their faces verified that they had not understood the origin of my parents' sudden largesse. Uncle Thomas looked at my father, disbelief written on his face. "Rob, tell me this is not true. Tell me you didn't steal from your own daughter." My father's silence was reply enough, while other family members were arriving for the scheduled party. The atmosphere grew more and more out of control. Some rallied my parents from instinctive family pride. Others, upon hearing the facts, recoiled in shock. My cousin Ellie was in tears, willing to give back the laptop that had been bought on money that had been stolen from me. Jacob came having driven all night from Portland and stood solidly in my defense. Through it all, I held on to the calm confidence that had accompanied my choice. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about finally ending the cycle of exploitation that had characterized our dynamic for decades. By afternoon, my parents were presented with an ugly reality. Their accounts were frozen, their recent purchases were being recorded as evidence. Family members who had accepted gifts were returning them, horrified to discover they had been purchased with stolen funds. The pretense of the benevolent parents had collapsed, unveiling the truth they had concealed for years. "This is not finished," my father had threatened as we were leaving. "Family does not play like this with family." "You are right," I agreed, looking him straight in the eye. "Family does not play like this with family. Do not forget the next time you think you should steal from your daughter." We left them standing in their newly renovated living room, surrounded by the material possessions they had cherished over their relationship with their own child, as agonizing as the confrontation had been. With every step away from that home, I felt a burden lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I had not been their victim. The weeks that followed the confrontation passed in a haze of legal processes, emotional processing, and practical realignment. The immediate financial effect was dramatic, whereas the bank had frozen my parents' accounts. Recovering the funds was inordinately complicated. Some of it had already been dissipated, Other amounts had been sent to relatives who had unwittingly received gifts bought with stolen money. Michael walked me through making a proper police report, which led to my parents being charged with identity theft and financial fraud. The prosecutor counseled me the case could drag on for months, especially if my parents contested the charges. "They will battle," I informed him with confidence. "They could not admit fault, which would be admitting they were in error. They cannot do that." Sure enough, my parents retained a defense lawyer who had a specialty in family money disagreements. Their defense tactic came together rapidly. Asserted the money was a gift that I had provided them my passwords willingly, that this was simply a daughter having buyer's remorse for assisting her struggling parents. The family split along typical lines. Some relatives, especially those who had profited from my parents' temporary fortune, stood beside them solidly. Others who had seen their manipulative tactics over the years were also supportive of me. The family group chat erupted in accusations, with my own character being called into question by individuals who barely knew me. "How could you put your own parents through this?" my cousin Ryan asked when he ran into me at the courthouse. "Over money? Is that all family means to you?" "This has nothing to do with money," I said. "This has everything to do with trust, respect, and boundaries." They crossed all three. Aunt Lisa was my support throughout this time. She had me stay with her when I needed refuge from the ever-present stress. She went to every legal hearing, her quiet presence a reminder that not all family relationships were poisonous. Jacob had his own conflicted feelings, though he was in favor of my going forward with legal action. The thought of possibly witnessing our parents being convicted of crimes hung over him. I just find myself thinking about Dad showing me how to ride a bike, he admitted on a late-night phone call about Mom simmering soup when I was ill. Were they real moments or more manipulation? They can be both. I said to him they can have loved us and still treated us so badly. We can recall the good times without justifying the bad ones. Professionally, the circumstances imposed unexpected difficulties. I was forced to resort to emergency leave to address legal procedures, explaining the circumstances to my boss in humiliating length to justify my absence at a pivotal campaign announcement. Vivian, my mentor who became supervisor, was surprisingly supportive. "Financial abuse by family members is more prevalent than individuals understand," she informed me. "Take your time, your job will still be there." My financial security, so painstakingly established after 14 years, was shattered overnight, whereas I did have other investments and my consistent income. Losing my house down payment meant putting that dream on hold forever. I transferred funds from my remaining accounts to a new bank, installing stronger security measures, including biometric verification that was not accessible while I slept. The psychological price paid proved perhaps the most stringent aftermath. In spite of weekly sessions with Dr. Winters, I grappled with trust problems that plagued all my relationships. I became paranoid about money-checking accounts. I checked them several times a day. Sleep was elusive as I replayed the betrayal in Groundhog Days. "What you're going through is trauma. That's what Dr. Winters said. Being victimized by parents inflicts a special type of wound because it betrays our most basic trust." Social media was a battleground I did not see coming. My mother, always so good at playing the victim, posted sad status updates about her ungrateful daughter, who had betrayed her own parents in their moment of need. Distant family members and family friends who were unaware of our history commented in favor of them and against me. I took the painful step to shut down my accounts, cutting off temporarily yet another tie to the extended family that I wanted to reconnect with. Weeks since the argument, I saw my first serious wavering. The constant tension had taken its toll on my health. I had lost 12 lbs, suffered insomnia, and had to endure regular migraine headaches. The legal costs added up even with Michael's cut rate for families. Part of me thought that bringing this case was not worth the expense. Not in dollars, but in wellness. I phoned Lisa at a weak moment. Perhaps I should just let it go. Write down the money as the price of finally discovering who they actually are. You could do that, she admitted. No one would fault you for putting your peace ahead of justice. But Mandy, this cycle will never be broken unless you break it. Your parents have never had to answer for what they did. That is why they continue to do it. She was correct. Of course. During my childhood and early adult years, my parents had not had to face the real consequences of their financial abuse. Every time they stole without permission, every time they borrowed and never paid, every time they crossed lines without saying sorry, they came to believe it was okay to behave that way. The following day, I reiterated my resolve to push through on the case. Not out of revenge, but out of a refusal to once and for all stop a cycle that had controlled too much of my life. As summer gave way to autumn, small triumphs mounted up. The bank recovered $34,000 that had been traced directly and recovered. My cousin Ellie brought the laptop back, and a few other relatives brought back gifts or paid equal value. My parents' effort to gift their home to my Uncle Thomas to shield it from future judgments was thwarted by the court. Most notably, I started constructing a new support network made up of selected family instead of biological family. My weekend dinner buddy group rallied around me with weekend dinners, movie nights, and the gift of normalcy in a time of chaos. My coworker Zoe invited me to have Thanksgiving dinner with her family, and I finally knew holiday warmth without underlying tension for the first time in memory. And through it all, I kept telling myself that healing would not happen linearly. There were days I felt strong and sure, others where I doubted everything, wondering if I was being harsh or blowing things out of proportion. Dr. Winters reassured me that such oscillations were typical part of processing betrayal from those who were supposed to be most reliable. Family relationships are complex due to their involuntary nature, she clarified. We cannot choose our parents, and society puts immense pressure on us to hold on to those relations irrespective of how damaging they could prove to be. Allowing yourself the freedom to prioritize your health over family duty is a deep act of self-love. By December, 7 months following the theft, I had reclaimed almost $50,000 through various legal means. My parents still had criminal charges against them with a trial scheduled for February. The family was still split down the middle, although some of the relatives who had at first supported my parents had approached them quietly after hearing more facts about their behavior. The greatest shock came from Jacob, who had worked his own history through therapy and come out with an understanding I still sometimes didn't possess. "They'll never change," he said to me over coffee on a rare face-to-face visit. "But we can. We can create something healthier, something better. Not with them, but with each other and the people we intentionally create family with." For the first time since the robbery, I had a real sense of hope for the future, not the optimistic expectation that had prompted me to show up at the family reunion, but something firmer and more enduring. Hope based on the pillars of self-respect and limits I'd fought so intensely to create. A year after learning about the theft, I stood in the courtroom when the judge handed down the last verdict in our case. My parents had ultimately entered a plea deal instead of risking trial to plead guilty to lesser charges of unauthorized access and financial exploitation in exchange for lighter penalties. The court also required full restitution of the embezzled money, plus interest of $84,620. My parents were sentenced to 3 years of probation, required financial counseling, and 200 hours community service. The conviction would be on their records forever, as they were leaving the courtroom. My mother tried to make one last manipulation, walking toward me with tears running down her face. "We only wanted what was best for the family," she had insisted. "Someday you will understand what it means to sacrifice for people you love." I gazed at this woman who had brought me into the world, and then spent decades removing pieces of it from me. "I already understand sacrifice," I said softly. "I sacrificed the illusion of parents who cared more about my welfare than their own." That's over today. My father did not speak to me at all. His eyes, so like my own, held only resentment as he followed my mother out of the courtroom. That silent exit marked the end of our relationship more definitively than any legal judgment could. The decision to permanently cut contact with my parents did not come easily. Society expects endless forgiveness for family regardless of harm inflicted, but they are. Your parents were a refrain I heard over and over from kind friends and estranged relatives who did not realize how deep the betrayal was. Dr. Winters guided me through this tricky landscape. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not synonymous, she said. You can forgive someone, but not invite them back into your life. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, to let go of the anger that keeps you tethered to them. Reconciliation demanded sincere remorse and altered behavior from the offending party. My parents demonstrated neither remorse nor alteration. Their court-ordered apology letter blamed situation, downplayed their actions, and intimated that I had responded too strongly. They had not worked hard enough to deserve reconciliation, and I had at last acquired the wisdom to believe my own intuition over societal expectations. With the court fight behind me, I began to rebuild. The recovered funds went back into my home savings, now augmented by a promotion to executive marketing director that included a significant pay hike. By spring, I had put down payment on a small craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood. My first real sanctuary. The healing process was more multifaceted than the legal process. Trust was slow to arrive, even among individuals who had never betrayed me. I established new habits when it came to money, creating several layers of protection around my accounts. Maybe most significantly, I learned to tell the difference between healthy generosity and exploitative expectations. Money is only a tool. My financial therapist told me that in our sessions. The issue was never your money itself, but the way your parents used it to control and manipulate. Healthy money relationships are based on mutual respect, clear boundaries, and clear agreements. I put those principles into practice as I assist Jacob in building his own financial independence, when he chose to open his own auto repair business. I invested as a silent partner with terms clearly written down. Our business relationship reinforced our brother-sister bond without adding to the complexity. Aunt Lisa continued as a pillar of my self-chosen family. Sunday brunches becoming a Sunday tradition I valued. You're like me at your age, she said to me once, establishing your life on your terms in spite of what the family had envisioned. I'm proud of you, Mandy. Her words healed something deep inside me. The acceptance I had vainly asked of my parents for decades was nothing in comparison to the real pride from a person who actually recognized me. My network of chosen family grew over time. Zoe and her husband invited me to holidays and celebrations. My colleague Trevor, who had offered unflinching support throughout the court process, later became more than a friend. Our relationship developed. Gradually, as I learned to trust once more, his patience never faltering as I worked through my residual issues of trust. The most unexpected evolution came from working with a support group for family financial abuse survivors. Relating my experience taught others to identify similar patterns within their own families, and by listening to them, theirs confirmed my choice to put my well-being above familial duty. You authorized me to protect myself, one of my group members once said to me. If you had stood up to your parents after 32 years, I could have finally told my brother to stop maxing out my credit cards. Years since the burglary, I turned 34. Surrounded by humans who loved me unconditionally, who uplifted me without exploitation, who respected my boundaries without bitterness. Gazing around at these faces, I knew that I had built something my birth family was never able to give. Relationships forged in mutual respect, not obligation. The deepest thing I learned on this painful path was that family is behavior, not blood. My parents provided me with genetic material and fundamental survival, but they never provided me with the unconditional love and protection that constitutes real parenting. Those people who held the title of family were those who expressed love through respect, support, and celebration of my independence. I still sometimes meet kind-hearted individuals who say that I should make up with my parents. They won't live forever. They advise. You'll regret not patching things up. What such people do not know is that I have patched up not with my parents, but with myself. I have patched up with the fact that some relationships cannot be mended because one of them will not accept the hurt they've inflicted. I have come to terms with putting my own health above what other people expect of me. I have come to terms with defining family in a way that works for me. The money was retrieved. The house was bought. The case at law was settled. But the real healing came in finding my own value and refusing to settle for less than I was due, even from the people that gave birth to me. Family is not where you are from. It's who you select, who selects you back, and who demonstrates that selection through behavior, not just biology. When constructing my select family, I discovered safety and belonging my parents were never able to offer. That is a lesson well worth every aching step of this path. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who did not respect your financial independence? Leave your stories in the comments below. If this post resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more boundary stories and tips on creating healthy relationships. Remember, at times the kindest thing you can do for yourself is guard your peace even from people who say they love you. Thank you for listening to my tale, and may you also find the strength to respect your own worth in all your relationships.